Growing for Market podcast.
Like every single time, just been blown away with how effective functional mushrooms can be for like different wellness layers. And so the first thing that comes to mind is obviously lion's mane mushrooms have gotten a lot of attention in the past couple of years, but for very good reason. They have actually been scientifically proven to restore neural pathways and start repairing damaged brain cells. So that is incredible what the potential that holds for things like Alzheimer's, dementia, ADHD. And I know personally for me, as someone with rollicking ADHD, taking a daily lion's mane supplement has been life-changing for me.
Hello, and welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, where we talk about growing, marketing, and the business of growing vegetables and flowers for local markets, like farmers markets, CSAs, farm stands, and local wholesaling. I'm April Parms Jones, your host and a writer for Growing for Market magazine. For 33 years, the magazine for flower and vegetable market farmers. If you're enjoying the podcast, just wait until you see the magazine. Go to growingformarket.com for more. Also, if you could give us a follow and a rating, it really helps other like-minded people to find the podcast. And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind the screen. It launches this summer, but GFM listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/GFM. That's farmhand.partners/GFM for early access.
Hello, everyone. This is April, and I am so ecstatic to have Erin on today. Erin is here to talk all about mushrooms and the wonder of mushrooms, and it's going to be a really fun and exciting time. So, let me tell you about Erin. Erin Hamilton is an agricultural educator and expert mushroom grower. She's from the beautiful state of Michigan, and she's the founder of the Mushroom Conservatory. And she focuses on growing beautiful, delicious mushrooms, teaching people how to grow mushrooms, and she has a mushroom business. And so we are just so ecstatic to have Erin on today to talk about the beauty of mushrooms. Hey, Erin.
Hi, April. It's so good to be here, and it's so fun to reconnect. I think last time we saw each other, we were at the Ohio Pawpaw Festival last year, and it just seems like we've lived a million lifetimes and had 1,000 great adventures since then. So I'm so excited to talk all things mushroom today.
I am too. And the Pawpaw Festival in Athens, Ohio was so much fun. I actually planted many a pawpaw, and I am now sprouting
Oh,
my pawpaw
really?
seeds. And yes, so I'm super excited. And I
Oh
would
my
love to talk
gosh.
to you more about I'm using mushroom spawn, the spent spawn, to
Mhm.
help my pawpaw trees grow. So can you tell us a little bit
I
about
love it.
how people could use spent spawn to help their plants to grow more ferociously and beautifully?
Yeah. So mycelium is sort of the underground network of mushrooms, and it actually runs through the forest and it helps all of the trees and plants communicate with each other. Trees can actually send warnings to their seedlings and be like, hello, little seedling, you're not getting enough nutrient or water or whatever. And so it's very interesting because mycelium is the communication network of the forest. But then if you look in your garden, you might see these little white threads going through the dirt, and that's actually mycelium as well. And your plants use those in a very similar way, where it's just becoming so much more intelligent with the way it's working with the soil. and, bringing the right nutrients and hydration to the right places. Really incredible. So when you're working mycelium into your garden soil, you're giving that a better shot at flourishing. And, obviously, if you're into composting and doing different things to make your soil divine and wonderful, mycelium is a wonderful addition to that. And then you might see like there's mycorrhizal soil that you can buy like at different garden centers. That is pretty cool. But if you wanted a DIY element of that, then it can work, if you're growing mushrooms and maybe you're doing like a bucket or you have a mushroom block going in a bag, once that's done and not spitting out anything anymore, then you can crumble that up into your compost and let that good mycelium start just working in and compost it right in with everything else. So you've got that going in your garden.
So that's a really interesting way to have an extra added benefit of having mushrooms and growing out your own mushrooms.
Yeah, you can really get an incredible extra layer of goodness and just keeping that full circle thing going. And I do like to tell people if they have the option to work with native fungi, like something that's, local to your region, there's actually an app called iNaturalist that you can go on and see what mushrooms people are finding around you and that they're consistently finding. That's obviously part of your local ecosystem. And so if you can kind of steer into that, like throughout the Midwest, there are a lot of oyster mushrooms that are native to the area and a whole lot of other amazing mushrooms too. But you can, if you're growing that kind of mushroom, then you can actually be reintroducing those into your soil. So you're working with native species. It's just wonderful to that. And then,
so you were talking about oyster mushrooms, and I personally love oyster mushrooms. And what I love about them is that, like you said, you can find them out in the wild, but you can also grow them yourself. So can you tell us more about the different types of oyster mushrooms that you can grow for yourself?
Yeah, so like there are so many kinds of oyster mushrooms. I work with a select few really good ones that are just consistently really nice to work with. So we work with pink oyster mushrooms, which are really awesome. They actually taste like bacon. They are bright pink, they're beautiful, and they're one of the fastest growers. You're looking at like 6 to 8 weeks from start to finish to be able to harvest your first flush of mushrooms on those. And then there are blue oyster mushrooms, which are halfway between chicken and crab, flavor and texture wise. And they're also like a nice big mushroom. They usually have like a blue, it depending on the temperature you grow them in. They'll either be bright blue or sort of a pale gray color. The colder the temperatures you grow them in, the smaller they're going to turn out, but the brighter the colors. The warmer you grow them at, you'll have bigger mushrooms, but a much paler mushroom in color wise. And so those are really beautiful, delicious, and they're really a go-to for cooking and a nice protein replacement too. And then you have black pearl oysters, which are awesome. They have this sort of like savory, peppery, but not spicy thing going on. I do a lot of soups with those. I love those roasted and with vegetables or just about anything you could roast a mushroom with. And then king oyster mushrooms are really cool. They have a thicker stalk and you can slice those up and kind of do like a crisscross hash cut on top and sear them like scallops. And the texture and flavor is pretty identical. It's amazing. And so then there's also golden oysters, which are sort of the controversial one lately. And so I'll explain why in a moment. But I love golden oysters. They've kind of got this bright, earthy, nutty flavor to them. You can be a little tangy. I tend to use those more, like they bring in a little more flavor, so I don't tend to be as heavy-handed with them. They're really great as like part of the recipe. I think they're a little overwhelming when they're the main course, but I really love them. This beautiful gold color. And then, so for the past couple years, there's been this whole thing where everyone's up in arms. They're like, golden oyster mushrooms are invasive, like we shouldn't be growing them, all this stuff. And something about that, like, didn't quite sit right with me. And so I've been looking, and initially I was just doing some digging and finding that, well, yes, we're seeing more of them, but they're actually removing contaminants from soil and water faster than it's happening in nature on its own. So I was like, well, if you're saying they're invasive, it seems like they escaped and started doing some cleanup effort on their own. But then I started looking because there's only one research paper out about this that claims that they're invasive and it's this big golden oyster takeover in the Midwest. And I started looking closer because I was like, wait, this is only one research paper that everyone's pointing at and saying this. And some of the claims in the paper are we've never seen them in the Midwest till the past few years, so they couldn't possibly be native. And then saying like, oh, we're seeing so much more of them. So, all this. But then I was like, it still just doesn't seem right. So I start digging. And first off, I was able to find records of golden oyster specimens dating back to at least the 1950s in Michigan, where there were golden oyster mushrooms growing. So this is not something that's completely been introduced from, somewhere else. Like they've been happening in Michigan for a long time, and I don't think that it's some surprise invasive species. But then on top of that, I started looking, I was like, well, if we're seeing all these reports, where are these reports of seeing more of them coming from? And they were in iNaturalist. That was what the reference was in this research paper. And we're seeing so many more in iNaturalist every year. So therefore it's invasive. And I was like, wait a minute, but how many more people every year are using iNaturalist? And so then I ran all the data on that. I was like, the number of golden oyster reports every year actually correspond directly to the increase in users of iNaturalist per year. So it's actually not that there's this huge like insurgence of golden oyster mushrooms happening. It's actually that all these people are getting out in nature and doing citizen science and sharing their findings. And we have to be really careful not to misinterpret that wave of data coming in as like, oh, all of a sudden this is taking over. So I have seen a little more golden oyster out there recently, like in the past couple of years, but I've also been looking harder. So I'm team golden oyster. I think we should totally still grow golden oysters. I think they're amazing. I think they do great things for our environment. They are definitely from Michigan, at least in the past 100 years. So anyway, that's my little thing about golden oysters, but I've been really obsessing over that lately. So yeah. So anyway, there's this huge range of oyster mushrooms and they're really easy to grow. They're great for cooking with. They're beautiful colors and you can do so many different things with them, from mushroom jerky to like Korean bulgogi where you're doing like a barbecue style marinade with it before you're searing it up. And I mean, there's so many flavors. You can do comfort food, macaroni and cheese with it. So, I mean, you can really have fun with your cooking. And they go well with your garden. You can grow them indoors or outdoors. And, in less than 2 months, be harvesting some really nice mushrooms. And then once you do that, you usually get 2 or 3. It's called a flush every time you harvest a round of mushrooms. So you'll get 2 or 3 flushes out of a bucket, or you can kind of maintain a straw bed in your garden throughout the year. And once your bucket starts getting tired and it's had enough flushes, you can take what's left in there and work that into your compost pile and start introducing good mycelium to your garden. And you may get a little oyster mushroom that pops up once in a while in your compost pile, but that's just, luck. So it can really be a great way to work our mushrooms into our garden and boost things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I attended your workshop at Mother Earth News in Wisconsin. And that was your hands-on workshop where we actually got a chance to take home our own little mushrooms. I did the pink ones and they were so delicious. And to me, it was just so surprising how you can easily grow in your house, even if you have a very small space, like if you have an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I just did mine in my basement and I have a small house anyway, and it worked out. Can you walk us through the process of growing indoors? Because I know sometimes people have a lot of barriers or fears. Like my fear about growing indoors, I'll be happy to share with you, is that like the mycelium is going to get everywhere and it's going to get in my wood and then my wood is going to start sprouting mushrooms. But that's my fear. So walk me through.
So that's not an uncommon fear. And I will put the fears to rest. So there has been this post on Facebook that's been going around for the past year or so. And you see like these huge mushrooms growing out of like the woodwork in houses or like out of electrical outlets and all this stuff where you're like, whoa, it's like the Jurassic Park of mushrooms happening here. And so The first thing is your house has to be so water damaged for that to happen. There has to be kind of the perfect storm of like an incredible amount of spores combined with just a horrific amount of water damage going on in there to create the right environment for that to happen. And the ones where you see like, a shrubbery sized mushroom growing out of the floor, like mushrooms grow fast, but there's a point where you're like, dude, like you just sat there and watched it grow for a week and didn't do anything. So I think maybe there's something intentional happening combined with a couple of really fun AI pictures that have kicked that message home. So a lot of people are really worried about that. But fortunately, as long as your house is like structurally sound and you're not doing a commercial mushroom grow in your house, like if you have 55-gallon buckets stacked in your living room and you're just not filtering anything, you have spores going all over the place and it's just out of control, like that would be a problem. But if you're doing, like a couple buckets and you're harvesting them when it's time to be harvested and all of that, it's totally fine. And you will not turn your house into Mushroom Jurassic Park. But yeah, so it is really easy to get them started though. So when I got into mushroom growing, it started out, I took this foraging workshop. I was literally driving down the road one day. I saw this sign that was like mushroom workshop today for free. And I was like, I have to go. This sounds so cool. And I was working in advertising. I had no like agricultural vision. I had been really into like all of John Seymour's homesteading books and all of that. But I was definitely like in young career mode and not thinking in terms of farm and field at all. And I just was curious. It's something about it drew me in. So I like ran off into the woods with these people for a couple hours and we spent the day out there. And this guy was just like pointing out mushrooms that I never would have noticed and showing us all of these just extraordinary things. I never knew that there were mushrooms that could heal you or feed your entire family or any of that. I just thought they were like good on pizza at that point. And so I walked away from that workshop really, really inspired, but I was also very concerned that I would pick the wrong kind of mushroom and die. So I kind of fell into this vortex, just reading and digging and trying to understand, like, how do you grow mushrooms? Because if I don't feel safe foraging them, then I have to grow them because this is too interesting. And so at that point, there was very little just like user friendly info, like here's how you grow mushrooms. Like it was very obtuse. It was like you'd go on Reddit and ask a question, and then all of the guys would make fun of you and you would never get your answer. And I was like, I just want to try growing mushrooms. Please don't make fun of me. Like it looks cool. And so it was very vulnerable. And so I just, after I'd done enough reading and like trying to get a feel for it, I was like, I'm just going to try this. We'll see what happens. I got some oyster mushroom culture and I tried growing them and I was blown away. It was like so easy. It was so cool. It was required so much less like technical skill and know-how than I expected. And it just made me completely rediscover nature in a completely different way. And so at that point, I just got really into it. And I started out making science kits for kids because I was like, well, if I had done this as a kid, I'd probably go get a microbiology degree like right off the bat because this is way too cool. And so it's all been a tidal wave from there, just getting people into mushroom growing, teaching, making kits, like whatever it takes to get people into growing mushrooms.
And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
This is Nathan from Tilth Soil. The other day, I told a friend that I think any product advertised on a podcast is probably a scam. And now I get to eat my words because I really do think it's worth talking to serious growers about living soil. But instead of listening to me bloviate about root development or trace minerals, you're probably better off just trying it out. Go to tilthsoil.com/GFM to request a sample of our seed starting mix and see what your plants think. If you're not impressed, then forget we exist. But if you like what you see, then reach out and we can get into the details. Whether you need a yard, a truckload, or want help organizing a group buy, call or text Josh at 216-870-0642. And yes, I am reading his personal cell phone number in a podcast ad. All right, play the jingle.
I'm in my garden, the sun is shining, my plants are thriving in Tilth Soil.
Harnois Greenhouses has been pioneering greenhouse design since 1965, working alongside market gardeners and farmers across North America to deliver turnkey greenhouse solutions. Their mission is simple: supporting growers' success with innovative, high-performance structures engineered for strength, efficiency, and longevity. Designed to withstand high snow and wind loads, their greenhouses optimize brightness, boost yields, and offer a rapid ROI. With over 20,000 projects completed, they're more than just a manufacturer. They're a trusted partner in building sustainable, energy efficient growing environments. Their NRCS approved freestanding greenhouse, the Ovaltech, remains a top choice for year round production. And in 2025, they're introducing a new low tech high tunnel, starting at just $2 per square foot, perfect for growers seeking an affordable, durable solution. As a Growing for Market listener, you'll receive an exclusive 5% discount on all new structures. Harnois Greenhouses, leading the way in turnkey solutions for local growers. Check them out at harnois.com. That's HARNOIS.com.
And now back to the show.
And so anyway, the basic process for starting your own oyster mushrooms, and this does work for lion's mane mushrooms as well. So those are the ones, we'll talk about lion's mane in a minute, but lion's mane are really phenomenal for your brain and they're delicious. So we'll talk about that in a second. But either way, if you're growing oysters or lion's mane, you basically you cook some brown rice, and while it's still hot, scoop enough into like a quart-sized freezer bag to fill it halfway full. You squeeze out all the air and zip it shut. You want to put that in there while it's still really hot so that it kills off any microbes that are hiding in there, like ambient mold spores. We hate to think of it, but no matter where you are, there are mold spores floating around the air, and your mushrooms don't want to compete with that. That's really the big thing when everyone's talking about keeping things sterile when you're growing mushrooms is it's really easy to pick up those ambient spores that are just part of your local environment. And so by scooping your rice into that bag while it's still really hot, and squeezing out that air and letting it cool before you proceed, you're kind of pasteurizing the bag and contents. So once that's cooled to room temperature, you just you pop open a corner of it, and you're going to take a syringe of liquid mushroom culture. It's like a syringe, and it's got this liquid in it. It's kind of a gel. So it's like a living mushroom tissue suspended in a nutrient broth in a syringe. And usually those syringes will be 5 or 10 milliliters, and you only need 1 milliliter of that to start your rice. So you take your full bag of rice here, and then you add just 1 milliliter of that into the bag. And then you use paper bandage tape to tape that bag shut on top. And what that does is it makes like a little air filter. And you don't want to use cloth bandage tape. You want to use it's like the paper bandage tape. You've probably seen it if you got blood work done, or maybe stitches or something where they're just taping on some gauze or something. And it happens to make the perfect little mushroom growing filter. You can use it on your bags with the rice. You can use it on your buckets later. It's great. And it's like $1. So you put the culture into your bag of rice. You tape the top of that shut with your paper bandage tape so it can breathe a little bit. And then you just tuck that in a corner, room temperature, to sit for a couple of weeks. What's going to happen is the mycelium in that culture is going to grow all over that rice. It's going to be covered with this fluffy white stuff. And that's called mycelium. And then once that's completely colonized and covered, what you'll do is take that. At that point, it's become something called grain spawn. And you use that as sort of, people will say mushroom seeds. There's no such thing as mushroom seeds, but if there was a mushroom seed, that's what we're talking about here. So it's got the mycelium growing all over it. And what happens is whatever you're going to crumble that into, that mycelium is going to spread onto. So you can use that for starting a bucket of mushrooms growing or for starting a garden bed. And so if you're going to do a bucket, then you can do any size bucket you want. That can be a gallon size bucket or an ice cream tub. It can be a 5-gallon bucket. I'm a big fan of using whatever container you can get your hands on. I've even seen it work in trash bags. You just want to make sure it's an unscented trash bag if you do that, because you don't want the chemicals of whatever they scent trash bags with to be part of your mushrooms. So anyway, you will take whatever your container is going to be. If you're doing a bucket, you're going to put a few holes in it, usually like a 5/8 of an inch hole is pretty good. You just want something big enough, like the mushrooms will grow out the side of your bucket, and you don't want it to be like a pencil size hole because they will grow through that and you can get a big mushroom that grows out of there, but it doesn't really give it enough to hold on to. So once that mushroom starts getting heavy, they can break off before they're ready to harvest. It's too small of a hole. So usually like 1/2 inch to like 5/8 of an inch is like a good size to aim for. On a gallon size bucket, I'll usually put maybe like 3 holes in. On a 5-gallon bucket, I usually do 8 to 12 holes and just sort of stagger them around the bucket. And then, so you put holes in it. And then, so if you're going to grow in a bucket, you need to prep straw, or you could also grow on like coffee grounds, cardboard. If you're going to do coffee grounds, I usually recommend layering with some cardboard. Well, I'll explain how to do the rice and then the cardboard will make sense. But so if you ideally are going to grow your oyster mushrooms on straw and you don't want hay, it's got to be straw. And you take however much straw you need to fill that bucket and you're going to soak it in boiling hot water. And you just want to let that sit for a couple hours, give it time to cool off and kill off any microbes that might be hiding in that straw. You can use a bale of straw if you live in a rural area where it's easy to get straw, but it's also fine if you go into a pet store or like a family farm and home, Tractor Supply, something like that. They actually sell these big compressed bales of chopped straw, and that is always super clean and really great to work with. And what you do is you just take that, you soak it in hot water. Once that's cool, you drain out the water, and then you put like I guess if you're into gardening, you know what field capacity means. So it's not sopping wet. You like pull out a handful of straw, you squeeze it out, and when it's not like completely dripping wet, you just layer it in your bucket like 2 inches deep. And then you're going to crumble like a couple tablespoons of that grain spawn that you made with your rice and your culture. Crumble a couple tablespoons over the top of that. And then you squeeze out another handful of straw and you layer that, put a couple more inches of straw and a little more of your spawn. And then you keep layering that all the way to the top until it's got maybe an inch or two of space at the top. And then at that point, you would pop your lid on and you end with a layer of straw on top. And then you pop your lid on and you use more of that paper bandage tape to tape over the holes that you put in your bucket so that you've got some nice little air filters happening on there. And then once you do that, you just let it sit. You can put it on your kitchen counter, basement, shady spot on the porch. You just don't want it in like scorching direct sunlight where it's going to get too hot so that it doesn't like start to ferment. But it actually does like a little bit of sunlight. It boosts, oyster mushrooms have a big boost in vitamin D when they get sunlight. So it's one of the only non-meat sources of vitamin D. So if you happen to have it on your counter or something where there's a little sunlight, that's a good thing. So anyway, you're going to just let that sit. Pink oysters tend to pop up the fastest, usually 3 to 6 weeks after you put the spawn and the straw in the bucket. The kings can take slightly longer. Everything else sort of falls in the middle. But you just let it sit, you leave it alone. Don't take your lid off. Everyone always wants to take the lid off and peek at their mushrooms and see how they're growing. But actually, you want that CO2 to build up in the top of your bucket. It helps them grow out of the bucket in the correct direction. And if you keep peeking, they're going to realize there's air up there and you can wind up with your mushrooms going weird or contaminated. So no matter how tempted you are to take your lid off your bucket, don't take your lid off the bucket. And then you just let it sit until you start seeing these tiny baby mushrooms will start trying to push through the tape on some of those holes. And they're really cute. And when you first see them, you're just going to be like, oh my goodness, they're so cute, the little babies, they're adorable. And they really are adorable. I mean, it's just, you are not prepared for how cute these things are when they first pop out. And so you won't see them on every single hole. Usually they'll pick a few holes that they're going to grow out of. The rest will use as air holes. And then you just peel the tape off wherever they're trying to push through. It's okay if you don't realize in time that they're trying to push through and they beat you to it. Oyster mushrooms are very strong and they will push their way through the tape. If you don't catch it, you'll just wind up with like nicer looking caps if they didn't have to fight through the tape. And so once that happens, all you have to do is just use like a little spray bottle of water and spray above each hole every day for about a week. And then at that point, you'll have beautiful full-grown mushrooms that are ready to cook up and enjoy. And oyster mushrooms taste really weird raw, so definitely cook them up before you enjoy them.
I love that. And I love that you went through a lot of steps, but it definitely seems very easy and doable for a mushroom grower to start out. And then what I love is that you gave us lots of different options. Like at the beginning, you told us about the pink oysters, the blue oysters, the black pearl, the king oyster, the golden oyster. So just in the oyster kingdom alone, there's so many, and I'm sure there's more beyond that, but there's so many mushrooms that people can identify with and enjoy and try out. And I love that there's so many different ways that you can grow out mushrooms and cook the mushrooms. You also talked about medicinal mushrooms, which are incredibly popular right now. Everyone is trying to get a nutrient competitive edge. They want to be more beautiful. They want to be smarter. They want more luscious hair, etc. And a lot of people are using mushrooms to achieve all of those things. So can you tell me a little bit about the medicinal?
Yes, so there's so many incredible mushrooms. And this, I was absolutely not prepared for like how many amazing functional mushrooms there are and how many different things they can do. And even when I was first getting into working with mushrooms, I was kind of like, okay, like they say it helps with that, but like, is it a placebo? Are we really gonna like experience that? And I have like every single time just been blown away with how effective functional mushrooms can be for like different wellness layers. And so the first thing that comes to mind is obviously lion's mane mushrooms have gotten a lot of attention in the past couple of years, but for very good reason. They have actually been scientifically proven to restore neural pathways and start repairing damaged brain cells. So that is incredible what the potential that holds for things like Alzheimer's, dementia, ADHD. And I know personally for me, as someone with rollicking ADHD, taking a daily lion's mane supplement has been life changing for me. It makes me much more calm and focused. And I know, like, as someone who struggles with being all over the place, which can be a strength and a weakness, that can get when you're pinging too many directions at once, that can become kind of a point of anxiety. And I've really noticed for me when I take lion's mane, that kind of just smooths out the panic and makes you go, okay, now like there's a lot of things we're thinking about here. Let's put all those things in a line and then let's like look at each individual thing and make sense out of it and then go forward in sanity. So I've personally experienced a lot of great things with that. I have a lot of friends who are like, what should I send my grandma, or, someone else who is just mentally, maybe they're starting to have memory loss, maybe they're dealing with depression. And so my go-to recommendation, if someone asks me, is definitely like a really good lion's mane, turkey tail, chaga supplement combo, because chaga really is a great stress reliever. And then turkey tail is phenomenal. Like it does a lot of great things for you. But it's really great as far as antioxidants go, as far as boosting your immune system. And then the lion's mane being in there. So getting something like that into your daily routine, honestly, even if you don't have focus issues, can just do so many great things for you. But I've definitely heard from more than one grandma who's like, I'm doing better at Jeopardy and I am not losing my keys. And it's pretty incredible. So I'm a huge fan of lion's mane and at all. But then there are some other really interesting functional mushrooms too, like tremella mushroom, which is, it looks like this orange, like, like boba tea with those little gel beads in it, like bubble tea. So it looks like boba, like orange boba growing on the side of logs. And it's this squishy gel that is phenomenal for your skin. Like it's absolutely amazing. It will make your skin just radiate. It hydrates, it's got all the right nutrients in it. So it's really cool. And then, you get into like turkey tail. They've been doing a lot of research for a very long time on the anti-tumor properties of turkey tail mushrooms. And there's a lot of just ancient history with turkey tail as medicine. But one of the best books I have ever read as far as functional mushrooms go, if you're interested in diving really deep into, wellness through mushrooms, is this book. It's called The Fungal Pharmacy. And I almost skipped it. Like I almost didn't read it. And I just picked it up on a whim and I couldn't put it down. I read this thing front to back. I stayed up till like 3 a.m. reading this book because it just captured me. It was incredible. And that goes through so many different kinds of mushrooms that you can work with for wellness and for tackling different things you might be trying to find a solution for. And so I cannot recommend that book enough. I'll send you a link to it, but it's really great.
No, that's amazing. You've covered so much ground with the functional mushrooms. Like personally, I have grown turkey tail at my farm on Chittenden in the east side of
Oh,
Akron.
cool.
And I definitely use it as an immune boost, like during the winter season, if I'm feeling the
Mm-hmm.
little crud coming on. And it's super
Mm-hmm.
duper effective. And I actually like the taste. It's kind of like light and airy with a hint of mushroom. It's real earthy. I love it.
It's really great too with your turkey tail. If you eat a lot of soup in the winter, you should just like be putting some turkey tail. Like it's obviously so woody. It's better to like soak it in hot water. You want to put a saucer over the top of a mug with that steeping in there like tea so it doesn't all steam away all the good stuff. And then just strain that into your soup stock when you're making soup. And so you're kind of like doing an ongoing working that all those good properties in for your family's food throughout the winter. I meant to do that this year and I didn't, and I regretted it a lot. So I need to this year. I'm like, okay, we are like going all in on like pre-canning a bunch of stock, and I'm just gonna do like chicken and turkey tail stock extravaganza, and we're just gonna see how this coming winter compares on the cold spectrum compared to last winter.
Last winter was rough for everyone, for sure. But that's why we have our functional mushrooms to save us every time.
Yes.
So a lot of people are getting into growing mushrooms to sell them at farmers markets, selling them to restaurants, or even bartering with their neighbors. Can you give us sort of an insight into how to sell mushrooms or any mushroom selling tips?
I have too many mushroom selling tips. Yes. So first off, you kind of want to, like, if you're growing for a market, you're going to want to get like maybe a small grow tent, like a dedicated space where you can grow a lot of mushrooms. A lot of people are selling their grow tents off very inexpensively on Marketplace right now. So it's a great time to grab one. And you can grow a lot of mushrooms in a very small space. I even talked to, there's a market gardener at one of the farmers markets I go to, one of the big farmers markets I go to, and he actually just has like a 6 foot by 6 foot grow tent. It's a little tent and he just stuffs it to the gills with buckets and blocks growing, and he does 3 markets a week. And that is, I do think it's probably like pushing the limits of production. Like he said, he's getting ready to expand into more tents because it's like cutting it close on space for that much. But that is like quite the production level for what he's doing and the amount of space he's working with. And so you can do like a good guesstimate if you're doing oyster mushrooms for market is you should, from a healthy 5 gallon bucket, you're looking at between 4 and 12 pounds harvest total from that bucket. And mushrooms are 80% water. And so they're big for the amount of weight that you get, like 12 pounds of mushrooms is a lot of mushrooms. And so if you're doing that math, when you're getting started, assume you're going to get 4 pounds per bucket just so you have that margin for error so you don't get to market day and you're like devastated because you thought you were going to get 12 pounds from every bucket the first time off the bat. But if you just assume 4 pounds while you're getting things dialed in, if you get a small tent like that set up, you can do, a couple rows of buckets, stacked a couple buckets high, and get a nice thing going there. And, get into the groove with 1 or 2 kinds of mushrooms, and then you can always add more. But no one's going to like show up at your farmer's market booth and then judge you because you only have 2 kinds of mushrooms. They're just going to be thrilled that someone has mushrooms. So, like, don't try and do them all at once. Start out with some that you feel comfortable and confident with. Pink oyster mushrooms are amazing and beautiful, but they decompose faster than the other ones. So a lot of market gardeners have a really hard time keeping up with pink oysters for market because it's hard to time the harvest to make them perfect for the weekend. So I do recommend, go with like a blue oyster, black pearl, kings. Those do really well at farmers markets. If you're looking at like how do you get into farmers market, I actually did an article for Grit magazine with all of my like top secret hacks for getting into farmers markets, preparing for farmers markets, being at farmers markets, like all of my tips and tricks because I did way too many farmers markets for a couple of years there. And I love farmers markets, but I was doing too many at once. So I learned a lot very fast. And so the best thing you can do, like farmers market registration to get a booth starts way before the season. And a lot of the time, like if it's like this time of year, farmers markets are starting up. There's a good chance, like if you didn't apply back in January when registrations were opening up, you can still call your local farmers market manager and be like, can I get in as a day vendor? And if you have a good product and you're doing something quality that they don't already have, there's a good chance you can still get in as a day vendor. But ideally, you're planning this the months in advance and then getting everything set so that you know, like, I'm going to have this booth every week. Like, I'm not going to have these weird jolts in production where I suddenly have 2 weeks off of markets because there wasn't a spot for me, but I have 40 pounds of mushrooms. In the event that that does happen, because it does happen sometimes where you're going to have to take a weekend off or something happens, you can dehydrate those mushrooms and bag them up. You check your local like cottage industry laws so that you're following the rules, but dehydrate those mushrooms, package them up. You can sell them like that way as something people can use later for soups and stocks. Or you can, like we're about to launch our own mushroom coffee line, which I'm really, really excited about. And so that's really nice because, mushrooms that don't get used, I don't grow for markets anymore, but we do a lot of events. So I tend to grow my mushrooms for events that I'm taking them to and doing cooking demos and all this stuff. But what's left over, that can get dehydrated and added to our mushroom coffee blends, making different, extracts, teas, and all that stuff. So you want to be thinking, if you're doing mushrooms for market, you want to think in terms of like, okay, what's my like plan for everything that doesn't sell at market? I mean, honestly, a lot of the times you will sell out of mushrooms because people are wild about mushrooms. But if you wind up with overages, just have a game plan so you don't feel like you just lost a bunch of harvest because mushrooms do have a finite shelf life. And so that's my top of the head advice there, but definitely check out the Grit article if you want to go like really in depth and hear about like my favorite earplugs to wear when you're next to a really loud vendor and all of that.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And your company is the Mushroom Conservatory, right?
Yes. The Mushroom Conservatory. Say we just moved into a new building in downtown Pinckney, Michigan. And so we will be open to the public in about 3 weeks. And we're doing I get to paint the outside of the building this weekend. So I'm really excited. But soon we will finally have an in-person retail space where you can walk in and shop, come in and say hi. And then we'll also have that available on our website, themushroomconservatory.com, which I totally accidentally deleted our whole web server over the weekend. I had 8 backups and none of them work. So I am in the process of rebooting our website right now because a business owner wears all the hats. But we will be back online for shopping in the next day or so here. And then as soon as the mushroom is out, we'll be on there.
That's amazing. And do you suggest, what about selling to restaurants, mushrooms to restaurants? Do you have any tips for that?
Yes. So I'm the president of the Detroit Institute of Gastronomy. And so it's a really cool, if you want to become a chef, this is the way to do it. It's like a really cool hybrid online program where you actually do most of your like culinary, like skills studies online through live online and pre-recorded stuff. And then you can like upload photos of your example of your homework that you made to your professors so they can review it. But then there's another component where they set you up as an apprentice for under like a high level chef in your area. And you actually work there as a paid apprentice during that. So it's this really cool process where you can actually work your way through and get your culinary certifications or degree and do that. But because of that, I love these people and I love food and it's just been so great to be involved with. But because of that, I have spent a lot of time with a lot of restaurant people and seen a lot of different dynamics through people selling different types of produce to restaurants. So if you're going to grow for selling to restaurants, you want to get connected with the chefs and understand that they love really good ingredients. And you also need to understand that during meal hours, they don't want to talk to you. And so you want to be, when you're approaching a chef to discuss potentially becoming a vendor to them, you really want to be considerate of the hours that you're reaching out during, because there's nothing more stressful for those folks than, when someone's showing up in the middle of a dinner rush and they're like, you know what, I do want some mushrooms, but you know what, you just landed at the worst possible time. So be very conscious of that when you're approaching them. It can be really nice to just try at first to get in touch, over email or a call. If you can't, then maybe you just packaging up a pretty box of your mushrooms that you've grown with a nice like handwritten note, your business card, drop that off. Like you don't have to go talk to the chef themselves if they're busy or whatever. You want to just get it to the person that can get it to them so that you're being very respectful of their time and space. Just let them know like, hey, we're local. we grow great mushrooms. We really want to partner with you. And the one thing I have heard people say is they'll, get a restaurant relationship going there, and there can be an ebb and flow to their needs. And so you do just want to make sure that you're set up where you are growing enough that you can supply the restaurants that you have these relationships with, because they are planning those menus in advance and you don't want to put them in a lurch. And then B, that they need as many mushrooms as you're growing. And if they don't, that you have another output for those so that it doesn't create tension between chef and mushroom grower. If you're like, hey, I've got way more than you need right now. But a really great thing to do if you can produce enough quantity is to connect with a wholesale produce distributor in your area. And that way you're actually providing that to them and they're handling, getting that to the restaurants who want it. Typically with a wholesale produce company, they're taking orders from the restaurants every week or every few days. And that way they can just go, this is what we have right now, and they can take that. So you could create these really great relationships. I've read a couple really phenomenal books on that were actually meant for wholesaling food products to grocery stores. And those have been the guiding posts for us to get our mushroom growing kits. We're up to 375 stores now. And that has really been what's paved the way for that, is all of the tips I learned in those books. So one book is called Getting Your Specialty Food Products into Stores. And the other one is called Good Food, Great Business. And those are two absolutely phenomenal books that will, even if you're not trying to get into wholesaling, they will inspire you, they will excite you, they will make you look at what you're producing in a totally different way, and they'll help you get a lot of insight into, working with food related retailers and restaurants and food minded people. So that can be a great gateway. I don't think that was even your original question, but there you go.
I love it. Can you mention those books one more time?
Yes. So the first one is Getting Your Specialty Food Product into Stores. And the other one is called Good Food, Great Business. And I love those books. I've read both of them several times. I just discovered Good Food, Great Business a couple months ago, and I've already read it a couple times. But Getting Your Specialty Food Product into Stores, I read right before we started wholesaling, and that completely changed the way I approached it, and it really let us hit the ground. I've read that probably 15 times, and I've probably recommended it to 100 people at this point. It's such a good book. So read it, and if the author ever hears it, I absolutely adore you and thank you.
I love it. I love a good book recommendation on a podcast. That's what it's all about. Yay. Who doesn't love a good book? So my last two questions are about growing mushrooms outdoors. Any tips you have for that? And then getting kids involved with growing mushrooms.
Oh, yes. You can actually follow with oyster mushrooms. Each kind of mushroom has its own little quirks and idiosyncrasies and preferences. But as far as oyster mushrooms go, you can actually take that same process we did for the bucket, and you can just dig a nice shallow trench alongside your garden. You want kind of like a semi-shady area. A little bit of light is good, but not too much. And you can just layer your straw, you heat up the straw and all of that, and you layer that with crumbles of your grain spawn that you made with the rice, and you just layer it up and with a top layer of straw. And I just always tell people, if you're doing that and you have chickens, put some chicken wire over the top of that and stake it down, because chickens love to burrow down in there and then eat all your grain spawn, and it's quite maddening when you're looking forward to your mushrooms and you find a whole flock of chickens sitting there looking all satisfied with nothing left. So that's a good way to keep them from taking it out before it has a chance to grow. So once you do that, chicken wire or not, you just want to hose down the top of that really good on that first setup, so it's kind of got some built-in hydration. And then you don't really need to do anything with it other than wait. If you're getting really hot, dry days, you might want to hose it down some. And then once you get to the point where you're seeing some growth there, you could just hose down the ground around it, but don't spray at the mushrooms directly or they'll bruise. And then as far as getting kids involved, it's, that was really where everything started with the Mushroom Conservatory, was doing science kits for kids to just show them the wonder of kingdom fungi and be all right, go crazy with this, have fun, dive in and enjoy the adventure. And since then, I have had a slew of children. I have 4 kids. My oldest is 7. My youngest is 1. And we have so much fun. We actually, the other day, my 7-year-old found a big patch of morels in the corner of our pasture. And so it was on Mother's Day, and we just had like the most fun, like spontaneous morel picking family moment, which was really sweet. And then, but they've, because they've been part of what I do for so long, and because until recently we operated off of our little farm here, they've been part of that. And so kids are great at growing mushrooms. Like they're amazing at it if you let them participate. This is not something you need to be like, get out of my way, stay away. This is not a kid project. This is totally a kid project. I've grown with 2-year-olds, I've grown with 99-year-olds. This is an everybody project. And so, you just want to make sure like little kid hands are like little petri dishes. And you just want to make sure they wash their hands really well, because after you go through all that to get your straw pasteurized and everything, the only time I've ever had that go wrong is if they dive in and start working on it before they wash their hands. Then you'll have these little blue mold handprints and stuff. It's pretty nasty. But yeah, so you can help with every step of the way, like getting that grain spawn ready. They can be part of, cook the rice with me. And they can help you, maybe they're going to put the tape on while you hold the bag after you put that culture in. They can help you check on it every day and really involve them in that process so they can see what happens. And so, it's really fun having them help set up the buckets and be heaping all the straw in there and all that. And like my kids love misting the buckets. They love being in charge of spraying the buckets when it's time. When I do large scale growing, I do typically set up like a grow tent with automated misting things. Those reptile cage misters are great. But my kids love spraying buckets, so I always make sure there's buckets for them to spray because they really enjoy it and it gives them a sense of ownership and pride in it. But Pearl is my 3-year-old, and I think she was rolling around in a garden cart through the venue when we were all in Pennsylvania. Yeah, in Pennsylvania, and for the Mother Earth Fair. And so she's been bug on the wall. Like our kits went viral for the first time the day before I went into labor with her. And we didn't mean to like name her Pearl as an oyster mushroom reference, but she has totally turned into like the mushroom kid. And so it's really funny, but she's obsessed and she can tell you every single step of the way with everything mushrooms. And she's such a part of it now. Like she's about to turn 4. She knows how to prepare a petri dish, how to collect a specimen, how to put it on that petri dish clean, grow it out, and then transfer that into culture. Like she's like from another planet. This baby is something else. So she loves the process. And she's like, because she's been part of it and it's just her world, she knows how to do these like scientific processes that most people don't learn until they're like a couple years into college if they're doing something with biology. So I think it really gives kids an incredible gateway into seeing the world from another perspective, but also knowing and understanding, like I have the capacity to dive in as a citizen scientist and participate and discover, explore, and work with these things that, maybe people haven't been able to work with in the past because we didn't have YouTube or anything to explain. And so like right now, I'm working on a project in partnership with the Henry Ford at Greenfield Village in Dearborn, Michigan. And they're right on the Rouge River there, which is one of the most contaminated rivers in the Great Lakes. It's got severe industrial contamination, so heavy metals, E. coli, just all kinds of dreadful things in it, which made it the perfect site for doing a mycoremediation research project. And so we partnered with them and received a grant from the Americana Foundation to do a native fungi survey, and then we're creating mycelium-based water filtration systems using native fungi. And so then we're testing this out on their oxbow and lagoon there, as well as running Rouge River samples through it. And so on Mondays, we've been going out there, my research assistant and I, we go out there, we take our kayaks and we go out to the island, we go foraging, we see what new mushrooms have popped up this week. And then we go out on the river, go around the oxbow, and we're collecting water samples, mushrooms, everything we can. And then I bring those back and they ultimately, I take them over to my little lab, part it out on petri dishes, and we're dehydrating them. And some of them are going in for DNA sequencing. And then, but it's really fun because my favorite part of the week is when I get home with with my big bag of whatever mushrooms and wild, wonderful nature things I found this week. And I sit there with the kids and we're like, okay, we found this one today and this one and this one. And Pearl just gets so excited. She's like, "Is it time to make petri dishes?" And so it's really like incredible to see. I mean, it just is an amazing way to see the capacity of children and how involved they can be if you give them a chance. So.
I love it. I love it so much. Erin, it's been such a joy and a pleasure talking to you today about mushrooms. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. We talked about different types of oyster mushrooms. We talked about farmers markets, functional mushrooms, growing at home, growing outdoors, involving your children in mushrooms. And I'm sure I forgot something, but it was just such a spectacular journey and a time of fellowship and to discuss the beauty and the wonder of mushrooms. I personally feel very inspired, and I feel like I can continue on my mushroom journey and excel. And you've given myself and our listeners so many resources and so much expert knowledge on mushrooms. I'm incredibly thankful for having you on today. And we can find more information about you at the Mushroom Conservatory. And I am incredibly thankful. Thank you again for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. And it's always such a treat to reconnect with you. And I hope you grow a million amazing mushrooms.
I hope so too.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Growing for Market podcast. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider giving us a follow and a rating or review. It really helps others to find the podcast. For more tips and tricks from farmer to farmer, check out our magazine at growingformarket.com. Whether you're a commercial grower or just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market magazine for the nitty-gritty of growing, marketing, and the business of market farming. We publish 10 issues per year with articles written by experienced farmers on topics ranging from tools and techniques to farm business, operations, and marketing. If you've been listening to the Growing for Market podcast and haven't yet checked out Growing for Market magazine, we've made a change so you can try the magazine for free. We've added a free month to the beginning of all first-time subscriptions. Try out the digital or paper magazine, and if it's not for you, cancel within 28 days, and you'll never get billed. With digital subscriptions starting at just $39 per year. You'll get a year of the magazine plus 150 back issues from the last 15 years. Head over to Growing for Market and subscribe today to benefit from over 3 decades of writing by farmers for farmers and Growing for Market magazine.